Well, hello, friends, and welcome to today's live level up conversation. Whether you're joining me live or catching me on replay, it is wonderful to be here with you. Welcome to the show. Let's get started.
Welcome to Level Up with Winnie Sun. Award-winning financial pro. Get ready. Level Up with Winnie Sun.
Well, hello, friends. I'm Winnie, your host and award-winning financial pro, a Forbes contributor, and a CNBC council member and contributor. And we are streaming here live on a whole bunch of different social media platforms. So definitely jump in, introduce yourself, say hello. Well, it's been a minute. I haven't been on the show in a couple weeks, and I apologize. It's been very, very busy. I had a little bit of business travel to take care of too, but I am back, and it is wonderful to be here with you. We've got a lot of news to cover. Let's just say it that way. Currently, the Dow is up 183 points. Hello, Joshua. It's great to see you on YouTube Live. NASDAQ is down 96 points, and the S&P 500 is down 7 as well. Yeah, it's been a rocky moment. I see a lot of you joining me on the different platforms. Thanks so much for making the time. Well, let's start at like one of the big things that everybody's been talking about this week, and that is the ongoing feud between the Trump administration and the Federal Reserve. Well, there's been a lot of talk of what's happening with tariffs, you know about the trade disputes and everything else. Well, currently the Fed has decided to hold rates steady, interest rates steady, because there's continues to be concerns about inflation and also Trump's tariff issues that continue to press against the stock market and the economy and everything else. Now, this is being reported by the New York Times, like Kobe Smith, Danielle K, and a bunch of other different publications as well, talking about how the Federal Reserve was expected, of course, to maintain interest rates, and that's exactly what they did. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell is navigating a lot of political pressure, including personal attacks that have made by the Trump administration. Recently, President Trump has demanded immediate rate cuts despite ongoing inflation risks. Now, we know that everybody's sort of in a wait to see mode, looking for some clarity on when, the economy will get better, but also seeing signs of a weakening economy and what that looks like in terms of resuming interest rate cuts. And hopefully, the big thing is that hopefully the inflation comes down. And if you've been to the supermarket or you've been to Costco or Sam's Club or anything like that, you have probably noticed that prices have not been going down. They've actually been going up. In fact, my husband just went to Costco earlier this week, and I remember him coming back and says, "Can you believe a bag of avocados now is over $15?" That's crazy. I remember thinking that, six, seven, $8, it was a lot. But 15 plus dollars, I guess, unfortunately, at our house, anyways, we won't be having guacamole anytime soon, which is to our disappointment because we love a good bowl of guacamole. But that being said, a lot of businesses like Clorox, Mattel, Denny's, a lot of them are talking about shrinking sales and having to plan increasing prices. People and companies are citing tariffs, and consumers are definitely pulling back for many, many reasons. So this is all impacting onto the Fed's decision making on when they can cut rates, when they need to increase rates, and everything and below. But a lot of consumers are actually facing higher borrowing costs for things like buying a new car or getting a new credit card and maybe having credit card debt, even student loans, mortgages. A lot of people, of course, are benefiting from stronger yields on things like their savings account or CDs. If you have the cash and you're in a CD or in a savings account, the rates are hovering around 4%, you still feel okay. But there are a lot of people who rely on, lowering rates to better their financial situation. So Fed Chairman Jerome Powell has warned that balancing inflation with labor market health actually may lead to tough choices ahead, as the Federal Reserve risks acting too late if they wait for obvious downturn signs as well. But President Trump has pushed to influence the Fed's decisions to um, change rates. And of course, there's talk about the independence of financial institutions versus politics and all that. But I don't know about how you are, but let me know how you feel about it. Do you feel like the cost of goods is high, that you feel like it's too high? What if it goes higher? At what point does it get to be too high? That's something that I think we're all waiting to hear and see. The only way that we can really sort of unwind this is, of course, based on numbers. If we see that people are in fact spending less, companies are hiring less people, then maybe this is a very clear signal to those who are making decisions that change needs to occur. And speaking of change, the US trade, of course, is impacting a lot of things across the globe. Tariffs, of course, are triggering record deficits, supply chain shifts, and economic uncertainty. This is being reported on CNN, Fortune, NBC News, the New York Times, and CNBC, and everybody else. Talking about how President Trump's sweeping tariffs have caused both U.S. imports and exports to plunge significantly, leading to major supply disruptions, higher consumer prices, like we just talked about, and a record $140+ billion trade deficit in March. So this is already starting to trickle down because cargo ships coming in from China are now actually arriving half empty due to the whopping 145% tariffs, while U.S. ports report export drops of up to 50%, with China-bound goods down 40% year over year. So here, businesses are pausing shipments, redirecting trade away from the US China corridor, and some are even storing goods abroad to avoid these steep tariff costs. So ports like we see here in Los Angeles and Savannah are also seeing canceled ship arrivals and slumping cargo volumes. So this is just ongoing. And it actually, if this seems somewhat familiar, well, this sort of did happen during the beginning of the pandemic, during the COVID era, which impacted a lot of the supply chain issues and caused crisis here in the United States and abroad as well. So while full product shortages, they say, aren't likely, but this does mean that here in the United States, we can expect reduced variety and also higher prices for the things and that we normally need and that we expect, particularly as we go into the summer season here. So the surge in first quarter imports ahead of the tariffs actually masked some deeper economic troubles because US GDP shrank 0.3% and consumer spending has slowed significantly. Now, our Treasury Secretary, uh, Scott Bessent, has urged us here in the United States in the Trump administration's broader economic vision, saying that we need to embrace tax cuts and deregulation, and that current tariffs, um, you know, may not be sustainable long term. So hopefully they're not sustainable long term. But despite these reassurances, you can see with the US stock market and these roller coaster waves that here confidence is shaking and global growth forecasts isn't looking so great either. So there's rising recession risk here in the United States and abroad. And most importantly, the global trade system is definitely looking fractured. Now, let's continue though, because you might be saying, well, what does that really mean for US and China? And is this going to be an improvement? Will we be able to play fair? And will we be able to buy the things that we need? And will we go back to a harmonious global economy at some point, hopefully? This is being reported by the New York Times. While US imports from China fell to 102.7 billion in the first quarter of this year, which is actually the lowest level in over 2 decades, 20 plus years, as the Trump administration's new wave of tariffs does take an effect. And in fact, China's share of US imports dropped to just 11% compared to more than 22% in 2018, which again marks a major shift in global trade patterns as well. So, yeah, it doesn't look like things are going to get any better anytime soon, but hopefully we'll be cautiously optimistic that it will. That being said, I think we can all agree it would be great if United States and China could come and figure out how to work together and conduct business together and have open dialogue and communication so that it could be something that is a positive thing versus in many ways seen as a negative thing. Yes. And it is great to see Sadiq joining us on YouTube Live as well. Thank you so much for making the time, Sadiq. Now, another company that is also putting on the warning signals about the issues going on with the United States and China is Nvidia. Okay, this was reported by CNBC today. In fact, Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang has said that losing access to China's artificial intelligence AI market is a quote unquote tremendous loss. He actually estimates that this could be worth about $50 billion in just a few years. In fact, the United States recently restricted shipments of NVIDIA's famous H20 chips to China, leading to a 5.5 billion quarterly charge for the company. Now, Jensen is emphasizing the importance of selling AI technology abroad, citing actually that he says if I'm able to do this, he's able to sell his technology abroad, that this actually could bring more revenue here in the United States, create more US jobs as well, and also maintain global leadership. So, despite the policy changes, Jensen says that NVIDIA will absolutely support whatever decisions best serve the United States, urging, of course, agility in navigating trade tensions and keeping an open mind. So, NVIDIA, of course, is a big deal right now. They have historic growth, and these restrictions with China definitely are putting a damper on their business. But Jensen is saying that the world is hungry to engage artificial intelligence and urging the United States to lead the charge globally before losing competitive ground. So let me know how you think about that. Like, agree, disagree? It's interesting to see now more CEOs talking about how this will impact their business. And speaking of an area that a lot of people are concerned about, I'm reading this on social media as well as talking to business owners, is what's going to happen around the holidays. Now, we know it's summer, obviously, a lot of spending takes place, families travel and take a break. But also around the holidays, aside from, back to school, the holidays at the end of the year is one of the biggest spending periods of the United States and globally too. Well, one of the benefactors of this, of course, is the toy industry. Well, one very prominent toy company in the United States here is, of course, Mattel. Mattel's CEO has come out and confirmed that toy production will actually remain overseas despite the tariffs that take place that the Trump administration has outlaid. And they said that just because of cost efficiency, the company is responding to Trump's 145% tariff on Chinese imports by raising US prices here for US consumers rather than reshoring manufacturing. In fact, less than 40% of Mattel's products will be made in China by year's end, with a goal, of course, to drop that below 25% in 2 years. But they're emphasizing that while manufacturing is global, creative and design work will continue to be here in the United States. But they plan to maintain affordability to make sure toys are so affordable, keeping about 40 to 50% of products priced under $20. That's what they say. But their strategy is to sort of balance quality and costs amid the global supply chain shifts. Now, despite these efforts, Mattel obviously has been impacted. So we'll see how that story unfolds. But I've been talking to several toy manufacturing companies based in the United States saying that these tariffs on some of these sort of mid-sized companies could actually take them into bankruptcy. There's been a lot of concern. So we'll have to see how this unfolds. I am not in the toy industry, and I don't know if you are, but this is something that I think as a parent, as a financial professional, and as a parent, this is something that I think is going to impact what our kids are going to see from Santa Claus and beyond this holiday season. Because I think it's safe to say that a lot of families right now are really very carefully examining what a need is and what an expense is and what a want is and what they can and cannot spend their money on and how they can save. And so families are having to make these more difficult decisions. And speaking of difficult things that are happening, let's talk about what's happening to Tesla in Europe. Now, I know we've talked about what's happening to Tesla here in the United States, but this is being shared by the New York Times, talking about how in Europe, Tesla vehicle registrations have just plummeted. In fact, in April, down to 46% in Germany, 62% in the UK, and get this, in Sweden, 80% drop, and 59% in France, making it its lowest sales in over 2 years in Europe. Now, the decline comes despite growing European demand for electric vehicles, signaling that it's not that they don't want to buy European vehicles, it's specific that they don't want to buy a new Tesla. So they're saying a lot of this, of course, is stems from Elon Musk political actions, including support for certain parties and sort of broader European discontent with the tariffs that are coming out of the White House. So Britain has become a hub for anti-Musk sentiment. They said their satire and art even targeting the Tesla CEO, fueling more brand rejection. And now there is an exception though. In Norway, it does seem that it hasn't dropped as much. Market share has dropped from 18 to 11%, so it hasn't been crazy. But they give you an idea. EV makers like BYD, which is a Chinese electric vehicle maker, is rapidly expanding in Europe. Sales are up 755% in Germany. Yeah, you got that right. 755% in Germany, 311% in the UK. So European legacy automakers, especially Volkswagen, they're of course regaining some ground because they also have some electric vehicle offerings. But yes, it does look like analysts are saying that Europe seems to be moving on from Tesla towards their competitors. And speaking of Elon Musk, you may have heard, of course, his discomfort and unhappiness with OpenAI not too long ago. And today I want to talk about OpenAI. This is being shared on the New York Times. OpenAI has decided to remain under nonprofit control while still restructuring as a public benefit corporation. So this is halting earlier plans to shift more power to their investors. The reversal, of course, is a win for people like Elon Musk, who was a critic, and other legal experts who really were concerned that OpenAI was going away from their safety first mission in pursuit of profitability, or more profit, I should say. So Elon Musk, of course, sued OpenAI and previously offered $97 billion to buy out its nonprofit arm, calling the move a transparent dodge. But looks like that may have been avoided here. So we'll see how how OpenAI continues to evolve, and we'll continue to follow that story. But currently, that's what we know so far. And speaking of AI, I wanted to talk about what's happening with Google. Now, this is being shared on CNBC by Pippa Stevens, talking about how Google is currently backing the early development of 3 advanced nuclear reactor sites. That's right, through a new agreement with nuclear developer Elemental Power. Now, each of these 3 sites is supposed to be able to generate at least 600 megawatts of power, and Google may purchase electricity once operations begins. Now, this is sort of a move that supports Google's long-term push for clean, reliable, 24/7 energy to fuel its expanding data centers and AI operations. Who knew that powering AI required that much power? But that's what we're starting to learn for sure. So funding will go toward early stage needs like site permits and interconnection rights and contract setup. These are all important things to speed up nuclear project timelines. Now, the Elemental Power Company, which founded in 2022, is still undecided on the exact reactor technology and plans to select the most advanced option when their construction begins. But Google is pledging to buy nuclear power and do it in a big way. So that's something to pay attention to. And it'll be interesting to see where these sites land too, because I don't know about you, but in most neighborhoods, they don't like having nuclear plants in their neighborhood. So we'll see where those will go. Now, speaking of changes, and so it's like one story I wanted to get your feedback on because I do think this sort of impacts all of us. Well, it's May, and one thing that's happening in May is there are a lot of people or a lot of voices out there saying that we need to boycott certain companies. This is being reported by Newsweek. Now, why is that, right? Well, a nonpartisan group called People's Union USA is a leading renewed national boycotts. They're releasing a whole bunch of national boycotts on a whole bunch of companies that I'm sure you shop at and I shop at. Companies such as Amazon and Walmart. So their Amazon boycott is supposed to be right now between May 6th and 12th. Walmart's boycott, they said, is May 20th to 26th. They're calling this the Economic Blackout Tour, which is a protest of corporate tax avoidance, excessive profit margins, and inequality. And they're calling for systematic change beyond partisan politics. Now, we know that the US economy shrank 0.3% in the first quarter of this year. We talked about that. And that these sweeping Trump administration tariffs contributed to fears of a recession and historic lows and, and many other things too. But the movement claims that they have no ties to any political figure or party, but they're just saying that these boycotts need to take place. In fact, they're even targeting future boycotts on companies, very popular companies here in the United States, including Target and McDonald's and whatnot. But curious to see what you think about this. And activists say they're pushing for a corporate accountability agenda that includes a diversity, equity, and inclusion protections for employees and whatnot, and tax fairness, they're saying, and anti-price gouging measures. And so they're hoping to make a big change. So their movement leaders are saying the goal is to shake the system, reclaim power for everyday people. Yeah. Let me know if that's something that was on your radar or something that you think you want to participate in and how you feel about that. Because, I talk to a lot of people about this and I read a lot of information about the what's going on the financial planning side and how people are dealing with their own personal financial needs and expenses, right? And I think there is an overwhelming feeling that people do feel like they don't have control. Yes, they were able to vote who was in office, but aside from that, and who their local politicians are, but aside from that, they feel like maybe they don't have as much power as they would like. And maybe, just maybe, that spending power is an area that you can take back your power. So I don't know. We'll see how this unfolds. And if I get any more information of whether or not these boycotts were successful or not, I'll certainly share that with you. But yeah, a lot of things happening right now. Crazy times, right? Sadiq is saying Mattel equals Barbie. Yeah. So I think Barbies are, we can agree that Barbie's going to go a lot more expensive. In fact, if you purchased a Barbie in the past or near future and you need to buy one coming up, let me know the difference in price. Can you imagine? This is what I'm going to say. Like, I just wonder, like right now they're saying that, these tariffs might not impact smartphones and electronics, but it'll be really interesting to see come the fall when there are like the Samsung events and the Apple events, what the new phones actually will cost, given all the changes that have occurred already in 2025. Now, speaking of changes that have occurred, was a big one. And I don't know if it's on your radar yet, but I want to make sure it's on your radar. And I want you to get your feels and your opinion on this. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but Newark Airport has been having some major upsets recently. This is being reported on CNN. I saw in New York Times as well. A serious communications outage at Newark Liberty International Airport occurred just this week. Actually, no, last week. I apologize. April 28th. And it's actually being called the most dangerous situation by an air traffic controller who was on duty. Now, this happened. This incident caused by a data feed failure between old and new FAA facilities left the air traffic controller temporarily blind and mute. They couldn't see, they couldn't speak, unable to see planes, and even be able to speak to pilots for up to 90 seconds. Can you imagine the stress on that? right? The outdated system they describe as relying on, believe it or not, floppy disks and copper wires. Isn't that crazy that something so important is still relying on floppy disks? When's the last time that you use a floppy disk? I don't even have a CD drive on my computer anymore. And floppy disks preceded that by quite a bit, right? So as a result of this, hundreds of flights were canceled and delays stretched to an average of 4 hours, continuing into a second week. But that's not all. Imagine not being able to see. You might think 90 seconds isn't that much, but imagine your job was to make sure that planes coming in and out of your airport with hundreds of people on them, families, children, business people, that you couldn't communicate with these planes or see what was happening for 90 seconds. Because of this, five FAA staff members took trauma leave due to the psychological impact of the outage amid an ongoing national air traffic controller shortage. So the FAA is now installing. Yeah, they took trauma leave, and get this. I read on another article that this trauma leave is like 45 days. So you're talking about very experienced individuals now traumatized. Now who's coming in to step in? That's my question. The FAA is now installing high bandwidth fiber optic lines, setting up temporary backups. They're reworking the Philadelphia Center into a more autonomous hub. But what I also read is these positions aren't things that you could just bring in like temporary workers all of a sudden. Like people are trained in their locations, like they're not just handling one hub, but multiple hubs. And these people are very much relied on and have significant experience. So if you have five of them taking leave, this is a big deal. Now, experts are saying this chaos is like literally like driving blindfolded on a busy highway for 90 seconds, highlighting the extreme stress air traffic controllers are enduring. So, aviation analysts are now calling for urgent investment in modernizing air traffic systems to prevent similar crises in the future. I don't know about you, but this does not make me feel comfortable wanting or make me want to get on a plane anytime soon. Because if you know what happens in Newark doesn't stay in Newark, right? There's possibility that this could occur somewhere else, and hopefully those who are making these decisions can fix it and make sure that it is truly safe for us to feel confident getting back into a plane. And I know many of you are traveling today, and I'm sure it'll be just fine because we know the air travel historically has been very, very safe, continues to be safe. But nonetheless, I think we need to feel some reassurances. And given what's happening with tariffs and trade wars and geopolitical risk and what's happening in other countries and upsets and whatnot, I think air travel is another area we don't want to have to worry about. I think we can agree on that, right? Uh, we're seeing a lot of comments come in. Yes, and Joshua saying he remembers floppy disk. I remember that a really long time ago, but yeah, I don't think my kids have ever seen a floppy disk. It's been that long. But with that, let's see where we're doing right now. It's about 6 minutes left before the market's going to close. The Dow is up about 197 points right now. The Nasdaq's turned positive around 12 points. S&P 500 is also positive, about up a little over 4 points as well. Thank you so much, my friends, for being a part of today's Level Up. It is such a treat to be back with you, and I'm grateful for you for being here today. Do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe to stay updated on all the latest insights and information. We've got a lot more to be covering very soon. This was just a fraction, but this is just showing how much is changing, whether it be AI, whether it be tariffs, whether it be inflation. It's changing so quickly, a lot for us to discuss. Definitely, if you want to catch past full episodes of Blow Up with Winnie Sun, you can check out NASDAQ, Amazon Fire, Samsung, LG, and Roku, and other social media platforms. And when sharing the episode online, thank you so much for tagging at Winnie Sun so I can see it. I so appreciate that. Thank you so much, my friends. Have a beautiful week, and I'll talk to you very soon. Take care now. Bye bye.